We're starting to get audience reactions coming in for Marvel's latest film, Thunderbolts, and already it actually sounds pretty good. As you can see from Rotten Tomatoes, it has a 95% audience score with an 88% for critics. Now, I did a video previously talking about the critic reaction to it where they were just heaping praise on it, and I was just kind of like, okay, yes, I've heard this 1,000 times. I mean, you're heaping praise on Snow White, and we all saw how bad that turned out to be. So I don't normally trust critics, especially ones who are given special access to a movie and in return they give like positive reviews or anything like that. I trust what the audiences say a lot more, and you can see on Rotten Tomatoes it's pretty positive for it. Even jumping over to IMDb, you can see a further breakdown of it, because one thing about Rotten Tomatoes is it's not necessarily like an aggregate where like the average score is 95% what it suggests. What the average score basically saying is 95% of the reviews are positive. That means it could be 6 out of 10, but that's a positive skewing. So it'll go into the positive camp. So if a movie, all the reviews are 6 out of 10s, and that means it's 100% on Rotten Tomato. Doesn't necessarily mean it's a 100% movie, if that makes any sense. So I looked at IMDb right here and see where it kind of breaks down a little bit further, because this kind of gives you an idea of what people are rating the movie. And you can see it's 7 out of 10s. Most of them are 8 out of 10s, and then a lot of 10 out of 10s on there. So it's kind of weird for the bell curve to skew this way. I think a lot of people who review stuff usually go like 10 or 1. It's like, I love it or I hate it. Just I recommend it or I don't recommend it. These have a little bit more nuance. So I would say it still kind of skews in this higher category where between like 7 and 9 out of 10, that's where the bell curve would be set. So anyway, it looks like people do generally like this movie, not just it's an okay movie and that's why you're getting a 95% on Rotten Tomatoes. It's like, no, people seem to be enjoying this movie. Now, granted, during the opening weekends, scores tend to skew a little bit higher because people who are watching the movie are people who saw all the marketing. They saw everything that Marvel made up to this point, and they're like, yeah, I'm still on board to watch it opening weekend, and I'm going to go rate it then. So people are usually a little bit more positive because that's the Marvel fans. The question is whether or not more people will actually come on board with it in the following weekends, because one of the things about this movie is even though the score is probably going to tick down somewhat, it's not going to be so dramatic. So it looks like this movie is generally favorable, or at least people like it, or at least the people who this movie is made for tend to enjoy it. It's just a matter of whether or not this is going to be enough for Marvel to put a win in their column, the first one in quite a while, if you don't count Deadpool and Wolverine, which was a little bit different because that was co-produced by Fox and everything like that. So that really wasn't like pure MCU Marvel. This would be like the first pure MCU Marvel movie in years that have actually been a success for them, if it is a success. But right now, according to this article from Variety, that's not necessarily a guaranteed. Box office: Thunderbolts target $75 million opening weekend. Will Thunderbolts bring the box office thunder? Disney's latest Marvel superhero adventure is targeting $70 to $75 million in its opening weekend, providing another needed jolt to movie theaters after the 1-2 punch of a Minecraft movie and Sinners. Globally, Thunderbolts looks to finish the weekend with $160 million to $170 million. $175 million. Now, that's really not a bad opening weekend globally for a Marvel movie. I mean, it's not necessarily fantastic where it's like, oh, this movie's a hit, like what we saw with Minecraft, for instance, where after the opening weekend, you can see that movie was a huge success for the studio already. Even if it wasn't profitable then, you can still tell that the movie was going to be a success based off of how much they spent and how much they brought in. This $175 million globally during the opening weekend, it's not quite at that mark just yet, but at the same time, it's not necessarily like bad or what we saw when it came to something like, let's say, the Marvels, where it was evident after the opening weekend that movie wasn't going to be a success. This movie, there's a potential for it. The good word of mouth is definitely a point in its favor when it comes to this, but we still have to wait and see whether or not this movie is going to make money for Marvel. These projected sales are softer than most of the recent entries in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Captain America: Brave New World opened in February to $88 million over the weekend, $100 million through the extended President's Day holiday weekend, and $192.4 million globally. And prior to that, only 3 post-pandemic Marvel Adventures: 2021's Eternals, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, And 2023's The Marvels have started below $100 million. Otherwise, big guns like 2024's Deadpool and Wolverine, Guardians of the 2023's Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, Black Panther Wakanda Forever, and 2022's Thor Love and Thunder were among the biggest opening weekends of their respective years. And all the movies that it pointed out, Eternals, Shang-Chi, The Marvels, those are movies that weren't financially successful for Marvel. And this is saying that Thunderbolts is opening worse than them. Right there, that's not a very good sign for them. Thunderbolts cost $180 million to produce and roughly $100 million to market, which is somehow slightly less expensive than prior Marvel installments. Still, the newest tentpole will need to stick around on marquees longer than Captain America Brave New World in order to justify its hefty price tag. And one of the things that you have to take into consideration, so $180 million plus $100 million. As a rule of thumb, the studio gets around half the box office revenue. That's usually domestically. Globally, they get less than half of it. Could vary between they get, I don't know, like 30% to 40%. I'm just trying to simplify everything. So I'm just going to say they get half of it across the board. So with $280 million spend on this movie, that means they need to make around $560 million globally in order to just break even. Realistically, it's probably closer to the $600 million mark if this is how much they actually spent on it. But let's just say, give them all the benefit of the doubt, they need to make $560 million. Usually when it comes to Marvel movies, their opening weekend is generally like a third of their entire box office take, because they're usually pretty front loaded, where people go out and see it the opening weekends and have steep box office drops the following weeks. If they made $175 million during this opening weekend globally, that's about a third of $525 million. So not a bad haul, but not enough for them to be profitable. They need to make I would say at a minimum of another like $50 to $75 million. And when it comes to more recent Marvel movies, I think this one actually has the potential to hit that mark. And let me tell you why, because they mentioned how this is going to perform less than Captain America Brave New World. But one thing to take into consideration when it comes to Captain America Brave New World, the audience reaction to that on Rotten Tomatoes at the time, I believe, was in the mid 80s or percent or something like that positive, which is nothing to scoff at, but it's nothing to really excite people to make them think like, oh, wow, I wasn't expecting much from this movie. I need to go out and see it in theaters right away. People were just like, yeah, I saw the movie. It was okay. And people are like, okay, if it's okay, I'm not going to rush out to see it in theaters. I'm going to go watch it on streaming. And I even said at the time, if they would have had an audience reaction of in the mid 90 range, something that we're actually seeing Thunderbolts have right now, then maybe that would have kind of spurred more people to be interested in going out and seeing it. Because when it came to Captain America Brave New World, yes, they had just under $89 million domestically during its opening weekend. But if you look at this box office drop right here between Friday to Friday, they lost 82%, 53% Saturday to Saturday, and negative 60% Sunday to Sunday, because people watched it the opening weekend, said it was okay, and then not as many people watched it the following weekend, and it had a huge box office drop to it. I'm curious whether or not we're going to see that when it comes to Thunderbolts, because like I said, it actually has a really positive reaction to it. So maybe people are going to be more interested in seeing it after hearing good word of mouth for it. And it's going to have some box office staying power. Just looking at previous MCU movies that come out, even ones that didn't necessarily have a strong opening weekend, there are examples of movies that kind of had weaker opening weekends that still went on to be successful for them financially. Just to kind of, for comparison, Ant-Man and the Wasp, when that came out, $75 million or just under $76 million, and it grossed $623 million globally. If Thunderbolts is able to actually gross that much off after this opening weekend, that's actually pretty good for them. That would be a success, or at least according to what I've figured, that's probably a financial success for them. Doctor Strange, they had a little bit higher opening weekend, $85 million, $676 million globally is what they got. Ant-Man, 500 or 57. Okay, so that was 518. Okay, a little bit lower, but a little bit lower. Guardians of the Galaxy, Captain America Winter Soldier, both opened to under $90 million, both made over $700 million. You kind of get the idea. Where's that one right here? Spider-Man Far From Home, $92 million opening weekend, $1.1 billion globally. So, like I said, as a general rule, they make a third of their revenue during their opening weekend, but that's not always the case when it comes to Marvel movies. If it's something that audiences really like, then they will show up to watch it. And this might be the first movie that Marvel's produced in a while that has that potential for it. I know some people might point out Deadpool and Wolverine. That was a little bit of a different case since it was partially produced by Fox and it was riding the coattails of what Fox did with that. So you kind of have to look at that as a bit of an outlier, and the movie itself even felt like a bit of an outlier. This is still like part of the MCU that everyone knows, and it looks like this change of tone might be the kick in the pants that they needed in order to get people back into the box office, which is something that they actually need to have happen, because the next big release they have is Fantastic Four, and that's going to have some stiff competition at the theaters when that comes out with Superman. So we'll have to see if this is going to shift momentum in Marvel's favor in the lead up to the release of that, or if this is just going to be another dead fish for them. But let me know what you think about this in the comment section below. Are you inclined to actually see Thunderbolts because of positive word of mouth to it, or does it not matter to you regardless? Also, if you haven't already, make sure you click that subscribe button if you want to stay up to date with the latest entertainment news. And don't forget to click that like button and share this video out there because it really helps out with the channel. Thank you.